Welcome, folks, to the latest installment of the Coaches Connect call. I'm Coach Jeremy, and we have a great group of coaches joining us today. Uh, I'm bringing the first topic actually today, and this one comes directly from not only my own coaching practice, but also a question that was shared with us in the PN coaches community. So someone popped in there the other day, and they asked a very insightful question, one that I hope coaches here put a little thought into as well, in terms of uh, a very practical question, not only insightful. So the question was, how do you get your clients to track fat? They had a few follow-up questions regarding suggesting healthy cooking oils, as well as how do you track dietary fat in shared meals. So let's say you're eating something where it's potluck style. Uh, Maybe you're a caregiver at home, you're the primary cook in the kitchen, and you make a meal, and then everyone kind of just grabs a portion. How do you account for dietary fat, or how do you guide a client to account for dietary fat in those various kind of scenarios? So, Todor, you were just giving us a little bit of your experience on that one. Do you want to just quickly recap?
Yeah, I think now that you formulated the question a little bit more thoroughly, like if I was to actually meal prep, I think even to backtrack, even like how do you even in those cases like potluck or actually creating a complex meal with a bunch of ingredients, it's more like you'll probably equally apply how do you track carbohydrates or how do you track protein. But I mean, like just kind of reverse engineering all the way from starting from the ingredients. So like apart from, hey, I'm using this ground beef. Let's see the macros for that. Using this, whatever else in the meal. Basically, like start from there. Like, what are the macronutrients of every single ingredient that I'm putting in this, potluck or this complex multi-ingredient meal, and then sum it up from there. And then, yeah, depending if it's like all mixed up, then perhaps it's equally distributed. Then from there, you can, depending on the portion, you can kind of know the overall macros of the entire pot, and then from there, depending on how big of a cut you get from that, you can divide accordingly. But I mean, there's just like a logical problem. I don't know if there's like a simpler way to kind of go than this, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that provides a pretty useful framework, I would say. Anyone else have additional insight in how they either manage this task for themselves or help clients to navigate that process? So Vicky, aka Ellison Coaching in the chat box mentioned uh, more of a focus on adding better fats or what we'd qualify as healthy fats. So things like nuts, avocados, olive oil, and lean protein, which tends to also be a dietary fat of animal fats or a dietary source of animal fats. Uh, that is one way to direct their attention, which is a little less focused on overall precision. So we can talk about that in a second as well. And yeah, David, you kind of hit the nail on the head here. So it is really kind of a best guess. So one thumb or two, depending on kind of visual assessment, do you see more dietary fat? So I will also say kind of this is the same answer that I shared with that curious coach and something that I've kind of pondered for myself as well. The reason why dietary fat tends to present uh, a unique kind of scenario compared to identifying protein, identifying fruits and vegetables, and identifying starchy carbs is because visually, dietary fat doesn't stand out on its own as much in most of the meals that we're consuming. We typically do not consume cold, solidified fats in most of our meals if we can avoid it. Most people don't find that super palatable. So therefore, visually, the assessment is a little bit more challenging. The way that we get around that one is there's a few strategies. So one, as Vicky pointed out, we can let our clients know, hey, we understand that this is a challenge. It's going to potentially reduce some of the accuracy that we'll have in our assessment. That being said, it may not actually be a stumbling block. So if we focus on dietary fats when we have greater control, maybe I'm doing the cooking tonight, or I'm ordering something from a restaurant and I'm more calorie conscious, I can order something that's slightly lower in dietary fat, or I can be more mindful when I'm adding fat to my meals. that's a strategy there. As Vicky also pointed out, you can look to focus on just simply having better quality fats around, so less of a focus on overall quantity and more of a focus on quality. That's an option as well. And then, as Todor shared as well, there's more of the of kind of an assessment-based approach where if you know kind of the overall macronutrients of the meal, depending on how much you eat, let's say it yields 4 portions and you know what the macro breakdown is for one singular portion, however much you had, that is how you're going to use that reference point and make the best estimate that is available to you. So I think that is a pretty comprehensive way of looking into how to help guide clients with dietary fat. Any additional insight from folks here, anything that you use to help guide that conversation?
Yeah, Jeremy, may I just ask a clarifying question, as in, like, are
Please.
we talking when we're talking about like what tracking fats, like why track? Like, can we answer like why track to just is it so we can kind of get the right deficit in place? We can make the right fat loss meal plan. Is that kind of like what the assumed purpose of tracking, just so we can hit the right deficit, so to speak, or the right?
Typically, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, that's likely going to be the most common scenario of why are we tracking dietary fat to begin with, will likely yield or likely take us to a place where we are looking to purposely create some sort of energy surplus or deficit. And
Okay.
knowing how much dietary fat we currently have on average in our diet is a useful starting place to say, hey, we should add more, and then potentially at which specific meals, or we should reduce some, and here's some specific meals in which we can look to reduce some dietary fat. So yeah, we're looking to build awareness. What we do with that awareness, whether we are looking to change body composition, enhance performance or health, even at that starting layer of just trying to build that awareness, that's kind of where we're starting here. And yes, I think it's worth calling out that it does present a little bit of a unique challenge when we compare it to identifying kind of protein on the plate or identifying our fruits and veggies, things that tend to visually stand out a little bit more.
Mhm. Got it. Nice.
Yep. Uh, you'll notice that uh, if you practice long enough with clients, they'll typically, most coaches, I think, if they have a certain way of practicing, they have a certain clientele that uh, makes up the majority of their client roster, you'll typically have some practices that you will do in not a set order, but think of it as like a playlist. Like when in doubt, I can always go to this playlist. For me personally, dietary fat comes rather near the end of that playlist, especially when we're talking about nutrients and macronutrient awareness, because oftentimes we can see the changes that we want to see without having to have a strong focus on dietary fat. When it does pop up and become quite useful is if you are experiencing working with a client looking to make body composition changes and they've done quite a good job of optimizing or getting in within specific ranges for the other macros, but they're just not seeing the changes that they want to see. Dietary fat may be that place where it's like there are some hidden things that we're not visually assessing that we could be a little bit more mindful of. And seeing as dietary fat tends to have a little bit of more of a calorie punch to it, that can actually be the thing that helps get us over the line and get us towards that either surplus or deficit, depending on what we're looking for.
Mhm. Makes sense. It's not a low-hanging fruit, so to speak, in terms of the impacts, the
Yeah,
immediate impact variables that could be manipulated first before tapping into the fat. Yeah.
exactly. Especially if you're working with a client who isn't used to macro tracking or hasn't done a lot of tracking in a dietary intervention before, that may be one place where it's like they're going to have additional trouble doing that one. We may want to reserve it for later to just see are there more opportunities that are present as low hanging fruit? Can we maximize those first? And then we'll cross this bridge here if we need to eventually.
Mhm. Makes sense. Makes
Awesome.
sense.
Cool. Thanks for joining me on that little journey there, folks. I was curious to see. I was like, am I missing something here? But it sounds like that is a common experience for a lot of folks here. Uh, that being said, I want to open it up to the crew here. Zubair, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Uh, this is an open question period. If you have any questions or any conversations that you want to get started, please feel free to let us know. I see you raising your hand. Zubair, what do you got?
Hey, so Jeremy, thanks. Quick question for you. Is this only for the nutrition or is this for nutrition and SSR also?
This is all L1 and all L2 courses, as well as the specialized courses, Pro Coach. If it's PN related, this is a good place to get an answer, or at least get pointed in the right direction.
Okay, great. So I've done PN1 and I'm doing SSR right now. So my question is kind of about, I guess, my own personal inhibitions to start creating content and posting content to share with people to kind of get the message out. I don't necessarily need like more clients, but it's rather just a way for me to reiterate the information that I have, right, that I've gained, and then also to help other people as well. And eventually that can lead to more clients or online class or whatever, right? But I just feel so weird. I guess it's a little bit of imposter syndrome. I don't feel qualified to be able to do it, right? It's cringy to make those kind of posts, and I'm like kind of feared weird to like talking to a camera also. And so like I have all these things stopping me, and I've tried and I've made like the faceless ones, but I feel like they're too impersonal. It's like, okay, I want to be a little bit more personal with people. And maybe I start with the faceless ones until I get the confidence, right? Build up my confidence slowly. But just wondering, like in your journey and the journey of the other coaches that you have, like have you guys faced similar issues and kind of was there something that helped to get past that?
This is a great discussion, and one I definitely have some thoughts on from leading our Kickstarter course over the years. But looks like Brandy has some thoughts, and I'll let Brandy go first.
Hi, thank you. I think we all struggle from syndrome. Like, who wants to listen to us? We know nothing, we have nothing to offer. But the truth is that you have a lot to offer. And by not telling your story or by not putting out those videos that you feel are cringy or whatever your feeling is, you're actually robbing other people because there are people out there that need to hear what you have to say and only you can tell them that. So please do the video. It's going to be awkward. It's really hard, especially if it's talking to the camera and you're not used to it. Maybe try a different style so you're having a like a role play, like you know what I mean, where you're having a little skit where you're here talking about whatever and then you come back in and do whatever, and just to get your message out so you're not going face to face like this. Or do a B-roll where you're walking through your sleep routine. But whatever it is that you feel comfortable in doing, just get your message out there because people need to hear you. So don't let those voices inside your head stop you. That imposter syndrome is just procrastination, and it's going to steal from your creativity. So go ahead. And nothing's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Perfection does not exist.
So just fake it till I make it.
Get in
Thank
those
you, Brandon.
reps. Thank you, Brandy. Todor, what do you have?
Thanks, Jeremy and Brandy. That's a good mindset kind of takeaway. I like it. One thing that's helped me, Zubair, is really start to like kind of like overcome that initial fear. Is first, don't even start creating videos for yourself, not even with the intention of posting them. Like, have you started doing that like just recording yourself, speak in front of camera on the phone, not even with the
I've
intention.
tried, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'll just like for me, it's helped a lot. Like I just kept recording myself every single day, free flowing, whatever. And then there will come a time where it's like, hey, I actually like this, and like the more you do it, just behind closed doors, the better you get. And this is more like a practical thing that's helped me. Like obviously the mindset is crucial as well, but the practical thing I find is like it took me like months to actually creating videos like that before I was able to before I overcame the fear of like finally posting it. So I
I
would say
love
like,
that
yeah, every
idea,
day
man.
do like a couple of minutes, even 30 seconds, like that 5 minutes precision nutrition thing. It's like, hey,
Yeah,
I'm just gonna sit down for 5 minutes, but that 5 minutes could turn out more. So same
yeah.
thing. Hey, 30 seconds a day, do a self talking video just for yourself. Only 30 seconds. But oftentimes, maybe, hey, if you feel like inspiration, go for a minute, two, but 30-second everyday habit, make a video for yourself. Perhaps it's a morning routine where it's like, hey, what do you have to say to yourself to encourage yourself, right? That could be a start. Like, how would you motivate yourself to start creating a video? Make a video on that for yourself.
That's
Something like that.
awesome, man. Thank you. Yeah. As you were talking, I remembered that 5 minute, they either set a time or make the 5 minutes, right? You either do one of the two. It's part of our coaching, and it's okay. And just make it. If I don't post it, I don't post it, but just at least say maybe sit down every day and just make it, right? So
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Just make it. Posting, that's another, like, you can think about that later. Just
that'll
make
be next week when I come to the coaching call.
Yeah.
Excellent. I hope to hear that update next week. But before we close this one, uh, David, it looks like you added something in the chat box as well. Do you want to share what you wrote?
Yeah, I just said that talking about the imposter syndrome, it's like, you see so many coaches putting out information that's so basic that you feel that everybody is seeing it, but our clients aren't out there watching all these other coaches. We are. So, however you can share that information and whatever information you feel that you need to share, just share it because there's going to be people out there that haven't seen it. And that's one of the biggest hurdles to get over is getting out of your head that all these other coaches are seeing it, but your clients, the regular population aren't the ones seeing it. So just do what you got to do and, put it out there and eventually you'll get people that will actually start following you for it.
Yeah. Thank you, David. It reminded me of a friend of mine who asked me to post a workout video, and I was like, there's a million workout videos by big bodybuilders who are better than me, right? But he was like, no, I want to see what you do. Okay, I'll send you a video of what I do, right? So hopefully there's other people like that too.
All over, all over. I think we're all probably in that same boat. You start seeing it, it's like, oh my God, how can I put this out there? I just saw 20 posts on that, but
Yeah.
the same, we're not watching the same people and our clients aren't watching the same people. So, just do you for, whatever your clients are and, you'll get the right people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that contribution, folks. We got three amazing perspectives there to add to your thought process, Zubair. So, from Brandy, uh, along the lines of uh, who is this for? Who do I owe this to? And it's to your community. And much like David said as well, it may feel like the message is repetitive, but that message coming from you means something vastly different than it does from coming from a celebrity fitness influencer. When it's coming from your friend, from your cousin, from your coworker, from that person that you see as being that shining example, when you know that they face a reality that is similar to yours and not someone who has a personal or like a professional trainer who has a professional cook who has resources coming out their nose. Like it's a very different message, even though the content sounds very similar. And then as Todor and are added as well, uh, this is a question that I would actually turn back your way as well. Initially, you mentioned the idea of uh, you don't really need clients from this. Like the goal here is not necessarily client generation for you. And Todor asked, like, hey, try doing it as you if you were a client, if you were to utilize some of the behavioral kind of steps that we use. The question I would ask you would be, what is the benefit for you specifically? What would you like out of this by posting more regularly?
Yeah. I think for me, like it's really to help, right? That's to help people. And that's why I started all of this. And I'm sure many of you feel the same way, right? It's like, yes, I do feel like I have something to give. I think people need the help, right? And I guess your point is very valid that people see celebrities do it. It's very easy just to, yeah, if I was a celebrity and I had $1 million, I'd do that too, right? But they see like a regular person, like most of us who work 9 to 5s, right? And maybe do some coaching on the side, have to squeeze in everything ourselves. Like, how do you do it? So just like I just came back from the gym and it's like, okay, I only had 30 minutes to work out. How did I modify my workout to do 30 minutes, right? How did I get my nutrition in with my Fairlife protein shake and stuff, right? So it's like, okay, maybe that's what people need to know. And you guys kind of help me to express that a little bit too, is that give people realistic ways of actually, improving themselves rather than I fundamentally I see the problem is, and you guys have done this in the coach too, is that we live in a world of extremes, right? Where it's like, hey, you're either all in or you're not, right? So, but there's so much spectrum between where people can achieve goals. Doesn't You won't look like Brad Pitt from Fight Club, but you can achieve a great goal. You can achieve a much better health, a much better lifestyle, just by making some small steps one at a time, right? And so if I can share a few steps that I took, right, that I take and that what I've seen others take that have been helpful, then maybe that will help somebody, right?
Mhm.
And they don't have to be my client. It's like, okay, but if I made a difference in one person, they can say, hey, thank you for that tip. It helped a lot, right? And hey, I have 3 kids too, right? Because I have 3 kids, I got to manage homework time and workouts and school drop-offs and all that madness, right? So I guess it's like, okay, yeah, sorry for um I get verbose here, Jeremy, but I can bring my experiences that are maybe unique, as you guys said, right? We each have a little bit of uniqueness to our experiences, and that can help inspire others along the right way also.
There you go. And I mean, please do not apologize for being a little extra wordy here. Part of this call is to get folks out of our own heads and give you perspective, multiple perspectives from coaches who are working on the same things. We are often solopreneurs working alone in an office with potentially ourselves and then maybe some clients. Uh, but you really get to figure things out when you ask those questions, when you receive feedback, when you get to hear yourself actually talk through the problem. Hopefully, you identified a few useful frameworks there that you can apply. So, utilizing kind of some basic behavior change principles here, understanding why is it that I want to do this thing, being very clear in that this is building a skill for me, this is helping me capture my own experience. If I help one person, if one person views this and they are able to at least consider making some changes, that is the win there. Anyone who then reaches out to you, then you are more prepared to help them. That is also fantastic. But it sounds like right now the goal is I want to practice this skill. And if it happens to intersect someone at some point in their day when they're thinking about making some changes, and they might think, I don't have time to do this. But then I saw Zubair's video, and you're like, you know what? I can go for a quick walk, or I can make a slightly different choice. That is the win. You may not actually ever get to see that result happen, but hopefully, once you keep putting out some of that content, you will eventually get someone who messaged you and said, hey, I needed to hear that today. It just may take some time.
Okay, I'll start doing it today. I'll make some cringy videos tonight. Yeah.
Cool. One thing I would suggest as like a medium of getting into it, Brandy gave you a couple of kind of like doing the back and forth, or just kind of recording your day and doing like a voiceover dub for it. Something that I find to be quite useful, where I'm just speaking from my position as a coach, like not as an expert or anything like that, is to make the video where it's here's an interaction I had with the client. This is what the client asked, and here's how we went about that discussion. It shows like this is really what it's like to work with me. Here are problems that I help people to navigate all the time, and I'm giving this to you for free because it may be helpful to you. And if this is a problem that you have, it kind of tacitly says like if this is something that you identify with and you notice that that's a conversation that you would benefit from having, reaching out to me is probably their next step. So somehow they engage with it. They either give it a like, they put a comment there, oh my God, that's so me. It gives you many jumping off points to continue that coaching conversation in a very natural way.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. I've already got the ideas like churning in the head now. So hopefully I can bring pen to paper tonight. Appreciate you. Appreciate all you guys.
Thank you
one
for
last
sharing that conversation. Oh, Toto, go for it.
Just one last thing that I did before. I don't know if you use any of like apps like CapCut, but for example, CapCut is like it's one of the best app editors. That's like really simple on your phone. But you can have there's a teleprompter function there, and it's free. So basically, you can script out, like let's say if you're creating like a 30-second video, that could help. Like so, you create a script, you can read it like like 5 times to become really good in that. But you can just practice like reading it in the teleprompter. But the teleprompter essentially it's like you take like the script runs while you're taking a video, so it actually looks like you're not even reading it. And the
Awesome.
teleprompter kind of runs, so that's kind of like the news people do that stuff. But yeah, that could be also like it could be like a crutch, but it could be a good way to start.
Thank you, Tutor. Awesome.
I got to look into CapCut. I have my software that I use, and I friggin' hate it. So this is a good vote in favor of CapCut. And this call sponsored by the good people at CapCut, or
Yeah.
maybe it's a future thing we'll work on.
And fair life.
No affiliation.
Cool. Any other discussions that have been rumbling around in people's heads? Things that they want to discuss?
Jeremy, one thing from like a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, there was a conversation or more so, I was trying to optimize my fulfillment. I don't know if you remember that conversation. So I did like
Mhm.
huge progress towards that, and perhaps if I can just kind of briefly outline what it looks like now, and if you can give me
Hell yeah.
feedback.
This is a great time. Please.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, because I was initially when I started coaching a few like earlier this year. 'Cause obviously I've been into health and fitness my whole life for myself, but now I wanted to help other people. So initially, it started with creating like meal plans and prescribing like all this, what for me looks simple, but obviously when someone is starting out, it could be very complex. But it wasn't until I started the precision nutrition coaching program that I realized that what I was doing essentially was with every new client, I was like, hey, here's 20 new habits with that meal, because that meal plan is, hey, just a meal plan. It's an exercise program. It's just if you don't eat the sugar, don't do this. Like, here's do this. And it's like people get overwhelmed. So I was trying to like basically, hey, how
Right.
can I make this a baby step curriculum? And obviously adopting a lot of things from precision nutrition. But what I came up with, essentially I wrote down, hey, what are the difference between like different level of clients, right? So like the way so level one is like, hey, let's use the hand as a guide, let's use intuitive nutrition principles, the plate method, etc. Level two is basically the meal plan, and level three is the actual tracking. So if I've divided it like that, I think tracking is like the most, that's just like a temporary exercise where that could be down the line. It's like, hey, let's just kind of gauge where you're at and how accurate we are. But that exercise, I've reserved it for later, the actual like 1 week or 3 days at least, kind of like based on precision nutrition. But the way I have my clients now, there's like basically like two tracks. So because I still sell kind of like that, hey, you're gonna get exact meal plan for your situation for and this and that. So I still feel like I want to give him a meal plan as well. So obviously all the workouts, everything, right? Like the sleep protocols and all that. 'Cause it's deep health coaching. Uh, but I said you can go nuts. Like if you're motivated, absolutely go nuts with the meal plan. Help yourself, and obviously I'm here to support you. But what I'm going to keep you accountable is just like 2, 3 non-negotiable daily non-negotiables. So it's like, hey, we're breaking down your goal into 3 things. And the way it's like, hey, let's do one sleep habit, one nutrition habit, and one exercise habit. So for sleep, so this is everyone that starts said, okay, we're gonna start 7+ hours of sleep, or we can agree with them, right? So if they're like, do you think you can, out of 10, how confident are you they can do this? Like if they're doing 5 hours now, that might be a stretch. So okay, what can we agree on? Maybe it's 6 hours. Okay, let's start with six, right? So I assigned that to them. Then for nutrition, I said, okay, you have the meal plan. So if you're ambitious, this and that, go for it. But if not, let's start with the protein habit. So basically two, because I coach guys, so two palm-sized protein servings per meal, or 3 times a day. That's kind of like the starting point. But it's like, can we do? And here's the list. And I created like a couple of pager. It's like, here's the list of the lean proteins that you can do. That is that doable for you? And then the other one is it's like every day you got to do, well, we agree on a number, but it's like, can you do 30 minutes of exercise every day? So that could be either the gym workout that I've assigned. If you're busy, go to the home workout that I've assigned, or on the off days, you do 30 minutes of walking, or if you prefer, you do your 30 minutes of favorite cardio or 30 minutes of your favorite sport. But if you don't have any of that, just do 30 minutes of walking. Can we agree on that? And if obviously if it's hard for them, then we say, hey, what about 20 minutes, right? So the goal is to say, what I'm going to keep you accountable is not what we hope for. I'm going to keep you accountable of on those things on your worst day. So if we can say, hey, on the worst day when your life just goes to hell, like super hectic, can we agree that you can do those things on your worst day? That's what I'm going to keep you accountable for. Because when it's good, it's a good day and everything is good. Then obviously, like all of us are very motivated, this and that. But I want to make sure that on your worst day, when your motivation is down, that's what the habits that I want to support you in, and we build from there. But then they still have like for those more. So it's almost like that worst day habits that I keep you accountable for. And then gradually we're gonna add like the water, we're gonna add like the smart carbs, the vegetable, etc., etc. So I have a list of habits we're slowly building, but within my app I have a check mark for every day when they do those things. But they also have that bigger picture, that ideal. They have the meal plan, so on a good day they can actually follow that if they want, but at least my enforcement, the weekly check-ins are mainly on those daily non-negotiables. But that's kind of like how and it seems like it's a little bit like, yeah, the clients are a bit more. There's more direction. It makes it easier. But yeah, well, I'm just so like, what do you think of that approach so far
Uh,
compared to this time?
yeah, so I mean, uh, I would say the overall kind of like feedback that I have for you here is that one, this takes a far more kind of uh, spectrum-based approach. So it will likely meet more clients where they are at. Benefit here is that it sounds like you're focusing on establishing first what we refer to as your bare acceptable minimums. The fun name that we assign internally is like the bare ass minimums. What are the
Mhm.
things that you can do kind of like in your sleep? What are the things that you know to be valuable to add quality and vitality back into your day? And yes, the phrasing we use often is like, could you do this on your worst day? Is this the thing
Mhm.
that like remains quite accessible even in challenging times? So I think that's very valuable. You offer all of the information up front. So I see this as both a pro and a con, depending on which person you have in front of you. So we know that if we're speaking like kind of broad generalities, most new clients come in to coaching with a lot of enthusiasm. They will have a lot of at least perceived bandwidth, whether they've qualified themselves or not to be able to do larger tasks and to actually fulfill those tasks with the bandwidth they have. We don't really know yet. It's one of the reasons why in our group coaching program, we tend to start very small and very manageable. Like the first task in PN coaching when you sign up is either to make time or take a 5 minute action. Our goal is to establish a track record of success. Yours gives folks the opportunity to one identify kind of their bare acceptable minimum. So again, starting with smaller or perceived smaller actions, and then they could demonstrate greater ability, greater bandwidth, greater awareness with the resources that you give them. But it's explicitly said, it sounds like that's like there's no expectation that you follow these at this time, but that is kind of giving you a roadmap of where we can go. Uh,
Mhm.
the the thing that I would caution you to like keep a coach's eye out for, and it's not necessarily right or wrong, it's just something to be aware of, is that when people come in, when they feel like this is it, I'm going to make all the changes now, they tend to kind of overburden themselves a little bit and go for the gold right out of the gate. One of the jobs
Mhm.
of a coach is to try and keep people in that zone where it's like you're challenged slightly, but your capabilities are also going to be able to meet that challenge. When we're presenting them with new information, it's like, okay, I can do this for a little bit, but in week 2, 3, and 4, I fell flat on my face. We've now kind
Mhm.
of given them a track record that doesn't reflect previous success. And
Mhm.
part of it is because we said, like, you can run wild. There's going to be certain clients where that approach is going to work super well. There are some clients where I work with them, it's like literally all we really needed to do was schedule a standing appointment, and this person had all the information. They knew what they needed to do. They just needed a little bit of assurance that they were on the right path, but they were very capable. They were going to do the thing. If it was me, if it was another coach, it probably wouldn't have mattered that much. They're just going to be good to go. The other client that you need to be careful of in this situation is the one thinks they can do all the things, is ready to like have a perception of like, coach, kick my butt, tell me what to do, I'll do all the things. And then they haven't really been qualified accurately to kind of do those things. They just
Mhm.
expect it to be hard. They're willing for it to be hard for a little bit, but then previous experiences told them it's like, yeah, I do really well with like the 30-day diet. I do really well with a really restrictive 75 hard. But after those things are done, I tend to kind of fall apart. That is the
Mhm.
person that I would be cautious about giving them all of the information, like the keys to the kingdom, and say, hey, you can do the super hard thing if you want, because I would want to guard them a little bit more from making the
Mhm.
previous errors that they've made in the past. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it does. And I actually, there's one guy, but it like is essentially you want to build that lasting change. So those like it's not a one-time.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I guess the um, is I still have that duality of coming into precision nutrition, like the having
Mm-hmm.
that more because I was part of like a business mastermind for so it mainly focused on like the marketing aspect. So I guess like I'm
Mm-hmm.
the obviously like what would actually sell before you even get a client. It's like
Right.
are you like when you say, hey, this is a long-term change, it's going to take habits, this and that, and perhaps for some people that is a better selling proposition, but for some might be that. So it's more like what happens pre-sale before they become a client is could be totally different. So my goal is like, hey, they could have been sold into my program through certain promises, and I want to say whatever it took for me to get them in. So if I said, hey, like basically, if I'm marketing my top 1%, my ideal clients, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the type of marketing that I'm portraying, right? But obviously, like only maybe 10% of the clients will actually meet that client, but I'm still
Mm-hmm.
the due diligence to put the best forward, as in like, hey, this is what's actually possible, humanly possible within my program. But once they come in, it's almost like now, like you said, now I assess them, and it's like, hey, because I did tell you, it's like you can get good results, ideally speaking, humanly possible. It's humanly possible if you have this amount of deficit, if you adhere to this protocols, etc. And I'm not going to withhold those for you. However, let's actually have a conversation of what's realistic as far as your
Mm-hmm.
actual life, right? And if you say, hey, I'm going to prioritize this thing, I'm going to stop working, I'm going to do all these things just so I can follow. It's like, I'm going to work with you in that capacity. But let's, like, you have your wife, you have your work, you have all these things. So I'm going to really support you in reality, not the promises that bought you into that got you to buy this program. So
Right.
there might appear to be like basically I'm trying to reconcile my pre-sales game from my post-sales coaching, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where it's almost like, hey, you got into the program, and yeah, like they can struggle a little bit. Yeah, they're not building success, but while they're struggling, it's almost like parallel to that, I'm building up the actual coaching, which is like, hey, look, like you failed at meal plan, this and that, but that's normal, right? Which
Right.
look that you've been actually been able to hit those non-negotiables on a daily basis and start to get them from away from that fantasy that got them to buy my coaching program to like you're actually doing pretty well. You look at the habits that you've been building up to now, stick with it, and you're eventually going to get to that ideal. Because you bought into the ideal, but that ideal doesn't, it's like 3, 6, 12 months from now, not on day one.
Right.
Does
So I
that?
definitely have some, yeah, I understand what you're saying there, and I understand the kind of the duality between uh, selling and then what is mentioned in sales and then what is provided. And I have some thoughts on that. But before I share, coach is here. Any questions or any feedback for Todor and his current process? Cool. So from what you're sharing there, it sounds like there is a delta between what is mentioned in provide or what is kind of the picture painted in the sales process versus what can be provided on day one of coaching. And it's not necessarily like a huge like bait and switch where it's like, oh yeah, you're going to get six pack abs in the first 24 hours. It's not something crazy like that. But what you're saying is, I can provide you all the tools for what was mentioned in the sales process, but I would also advocate for a slightly different approach uh, in terms of one that is more sustainable, one that is maybe meets you more to where you currently at, as opposed to where you picture yourself at or where you want to be. Because again, there may be a delta even between those things, where you picture yourself at and where you currently are at. Because as coaches, we've seen enough versions of people's lives that we can start to tell the difference between someone who is more than likely capable of making this change at this time versus someone who may require a little bit of a bridge in order to get to where they need to be.
Mhm.
I would encourage you to continue to use that process, and then try and reduce that delta between what is shared in the
Mhm.
sales imagery and then what is provided initially. So even if that means in the sales call, there may be some people where it's like they are a little bit more skeptical of that, or it's like, oh, this is not exactly the thing that I thought. I thought this was like the rapid fat loss program. Whereas he's
Mhm.
preaching sustainability and telling me about eating behaviors, and that's stuff that like I don't really know about, or it sounds a little bit woo woo to me. So being able to understand like how do I bridge those gaps so that I can meet this person where they're at, or even just giving them the heads up that it's like, hey, at this stage, this is what I foresee for you. But as we get more information, we will make more informed choices, and then our path may change based on that information.
Mhm. Mhm.
So just keeping it as real as you can with that person uh, is something that we probably want to emphasize as part of our role as PM coaches is being ethical coaches. Uh,
Mhm.
and I 100% get what you're saying from like a sales perspective. I will say that from like my own sales numbers, I tend to be around an 80% closer, which means that one in five people I piss off. Like I've had a person probably within the last five people that I've done an intro call with, where at the end of our session or at the end of our intro call, where I was fairly certain this person was going to purchase and sign on and begin coaching with me, uh, they got to a point they asked a question. It was like, this sounds a lot like talk therapy. Is that what this is? And it was a question that kind of made me like pause for a second. And I was like, no, but like there are some common elements that we have between what a therapist might ask you and the way that I might approach coaching with you. And they were immediately turned off. So I tried to be as honest as possible and let them know, hey, we're going to explore some of your thoughts and ideas towards nutrition and exercise. Like you'll get all the support on that front, but we may explore those things to make sure that some protocols or some strategies are a good fit for you. And they're like, immediately, no, I don't want that. I
Mhm.
just want the nutrition stuff. And even though like my intuition as a coach told me that it's like based on what this person is telling me from their previous experience, they would benefit greatly from my program. I could potentially have like turned down some of that and tried to dissuade them and be like, no, we're just going to talk macros. We're just going to talk push-ups. And like that's our conversation
Mhm.
week to week. But I wanted it to be clear that it's like, hey, there may be some of that stuff. And if you're uncomfortable with it, it's better for us to air it out now so that we're on the same page to begin with, as opposed to signing up a client, having them be disinterested and dissatisfied. Because as you mentioned, a large part of this is coaching satisfaction as well, not only from the client side, but from the coach side as well. Feeling like you're on the
Mhm.
back foot and I have to kind of I have to ignore my intuition as a coach constantly is not a great feeling when you're working with a client. If you see that
Mhm.
client's name on your schedule every morning and your first thought is, oh God, not again, that's likely a sign that it's not great client fit. And it may
Mhm.
mean that I am kind of adapting my strategies, maybe even maladapting my strategies in a way that is not genuine to my approach and likely feels like I'm not helping this client as much as I potentially can.
Hmm. Got it. Yeah, that
Mhm.
makes sense. Yeah, yeah, that's a good perspective. Like really have that alignment. Yeah,
Yeah, you can also make the argument that, hey, I can't help anyone who won't sit in front of me for the next session, and if I can't get their butt in the chair, then I can't help them anyway. That's certainly a kind of line of reasoning that people can take, but it really depends on how much you are willing to bend over and how flexible you can be in your approach for clients. And at this stage in my career, I've experienced enough times where I said, you know what, I'm going to ignore that red flag and I'm going to work with that person. And then very soon realized, oh, shouldn't have done that again. So it will really depend on, it may be incredibly valuable lessons for you to learn with these folks with providing the current updated framework that you had. And I do think this is a better approach than what you shared from previous weeks.
hmm. Got it. Yeah,
Yeah,
appreciate that.
lots of growth.
Appreciate that. Jeremy, quick question about your are you so when you said that talk, because I do understand like even that's why I'm encouraging more of my clients to get an actual call with me, not every
Mhm,
week, but if not every week, at least bi-weekly or once a month, at least once a month. Because like a lot of those guys, they're
mhm,
kind of like they're professionals, they're busy, so and they're males. So I realized from some of the female colleagues that I've talked to, women are
mhm.
or I don't know, I don't want to like just stereotype, but women are more inclined for those talk therapy type of coaching situations where, like, or maybe that's some bias from just my clientele. They're like, yeah, just
If we're speaking like, yeah, the broadest of generalities potentially, I will also say that this client was a female client and was immediately like, talk
uh,
therapy? That's bullshit.
okay, so that breaks the stereotype. But would you like how it's as far as like the structure, like is it do you have that talk or like let's say that actual coaching call as part of your weekly cadence, bi-weekly, monthly? Like what are you currently at?
So that was my initial coaching call, term discovery call, that happens before any exchange of funds. So this person hasn't yet agreed to coaching. Once we go from there, the first for a non-negotiable for my coaching approach is the first 4 weeks, there are mandatory weekly calls. At the end of the first month, then we can have a discussion regarding do you want to reduce your frequency of coaching discussions? Very
Oh,
few, and then the time period would be like, do you want to go from weekly to bi-weekly? Do you want to go from weekly to monthly? I make it
mhm.
very clear there's no discount on my coaching because I'm not trying to encourage people to say, hey, you can save some money and get less support. We typically understand that folks who have greater support are able to achieve more. So I don't know if saving a few bucks and having less support is the way to go. But if your time is incredibly valuable and you are finding that this is taking away from times where you could be doing something more productive for yourself, then I want that option to be available for you. And I let people know that, but very, very few people actually take that route.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, I appreciate that. And Jeremy, like with your, let's say, deliverables and just your capacity to fulfill, like as a solopreneur, not having assistant coaches, like how many clients do you think, ideally speaking, you can handle? Not how many, let's say you have now, but like let's say how many do you think you can comfortably handle? Where not like overtimes, like just 40-hour
Mhm.
week, 30-hour week, including your sales and marketing, um, like with your current deliverables, just like kind of get a sense. Would you say like what would you say like
My
30, 40?
estimate for just client related work, so take out the sales and marketing part,
Mhm.
was about 40 clients. That was like the sweet spot where it's like anything more than that, and quality of the coaching that I'm delivering is going to drop off a cliff, and then quality of my own life is going to suffer as well.
Yeah, so both. Okay, so
Yeah.
40. Okay. Hmm.
Mhm.
God. Okay.
Yeah. I tend to budget like 1 hour per week per client.
Hmm.
So that means like the 30-minute meeting plus time for note taking or preparing for that meeting, and then like a little buffer time if the meeting goes over.
Makes sense. And then those like based on the clients that you have, that because you said after a month you reevaluate. Just your actual
Mhm.
like what's like the average that those clients would tend to opt into? Is it like once a month, once every 2 weeks, once a week after that
Almost all
initial?
of them will stay. Almost all of them will stay at the weekly cadence. No one
Okay.
wants to feel like, especially when I mentioned them, like you don't get a discount for this. The price stays the same. No one wants to feel like I'm paying the same or more for less service. That's just a
Mhm.
rare human trait. Anyone who's ever taken this is like has been an exceptionally busy person, uh, and they were just like, yeah, I need that additional 30 minutes back per week. It is very valuable to me.
Mhm. Makes sense. And it's 30 minutes, 30-minute sessions that you have.
Mhm.
And how long is your average program? Like when you, is it like, does it differ or you have a fixed 12 months, 6 months?
I only run month to month programming. The average client stays for about 7 to 8 months at this point.
Oh, okay. Oh, but you do go month to month. Like you don't.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah.
Mm.
Cool. Cool. I really appreciate that. Those insights, Jeremy. It's super
No
helpful.
worries. We got a little too focused on what I do there at the end there, but I hope that was helpful for you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I didn't mean to get that personal. I really like, cause I'm just
no, no,
optimizing
all
my own.
good. Happy to answer as faithfully as I can there. That being said, we are running close to the end of our time for today. So I was curious to know, are there any final questions or comments before we sign out for today?
Yeah, I just want to express my appreciation again, Jeremy, for share that. I do, if I stepped over any boundaries, I do. What wasn't my intention? Do
All good.
apologize,
It's all fair game here.
but it was really helpful. It's really helpful. Like once I structured my own practice.
And likewise, thank you for sharing your progressions from the last conversation we had. And for folks who are curious, feel free to go back into the archives on our YouTube page. You can see all our Coaches Connect calls. Uh, and then we will meet again next week. Let's double check who is running the show. I believe it's a Kate week. I don't know if she has something special lined up for us, or is it me? Oh, it's me again on Thursday, November 14th at 2 p.m. So I hope to see you all there. Feel free to bring your questions, and then we'll meet again. Cheers, gang.
Thank you.
Cheers.